Today on NewsWatch, the death toll rises after a series of attacks in Brussels. See what's ahead as officials search for suspects. Plus, President Obama is in Cuba working to restore diplomatic ties. Hear what his visit could mean for religious freedom in the island nation. And
there's not another feeling like walking where Christ has walked.
I've been so moved by being here.
And I wouldn't trade it for anything either. I'm so glad I came.
Terrorism in Israel will show you how the latest wave of violence is impacting visits to the Holy Land. Thanks so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. More than a dozen people have been killed in a series of explosions throughout Brussels, and more than 50 were injured. The blast occurred at the city's airport and at a subway station near the European Union. The attacks come just days after police arrested the main suspect in the Paris attacks. Charlene Aaron has the story.
Two explosions rocked the Brussels airport as hundreds of passengers were trying to check in during the early morning rush hour. Passengers were evacuated from the terminal where the blasts occurred.
You felt the explosion?
Yeah, I feel, and I put that on my footplate and glass over my side.
We only saw some smashed windows and we didn't get any information.
I walked through a mess, a load of stuff, glass splitters, smoke, water dripping from the ceiling. We had to walk through puddles and we were evacuated.
And separate strikes were reported in various locations across the city. Another blast at the subway station was right next to the European Union headquarters. The airports and subway systems are shut down. British airports are increasing security, and Prime Minister Cameron is convening the government's emergency committee after the explosions in Brussels. Officials called the blasts terrorism, similar to the attack that took place in Paris in November that killed 130 people. The bombings happened only days after the prime suspect in the Paris attacks, Salah Abdeslam, was arrested in Brussels. Terrorism analyst Eric Stakelbeck earlier told CBN News about the growing threat in Brussels and other parts of Europe.
This tiny neighborhood called Molenbeek on the fringes of Brussels has really become a problem spot, not only for Belgium, but for Europe as a whole. It's really become an incubator for radical jihad, and we've seen several residents from that neighborhood. It has become a real hotbed for radical imams and ISIS sympathizers. We've seen several residents of that neighborhood leave Molenbeek and go to Syria to join ISIS. And now they're coming back, and we're seeing the bitter fruits of that.
The terror threat level in Belgium has been raised to its highest level at all transportation hubs. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
A new survey reveals most Palestinians in the West Bank support daily stabbing attacks against Israeli citizens. 58% of Palestinians endorsed the deadly attacks, but the Independent Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey says support has dropped 9 points in the last 3 months. The study shows 2/3 of Palestinians would prefer violence over peaceful negotiations if current tensions were to escalate. Voters in Arizona and Utah head to the polls for presidential primaries today. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are looking to pad their delegate leads. The two states are holding contests for both parties, while Idaho Democrats also hold presidential caucuses. Democrat Bernie Sanders and Republicans Ted Cruz and John Kasich are fighting to reverse the growing sense of inevitability about both party frontrunners. Most of the candidates spoke Monday at the annual American Israel Public Affairs Committee conference. The AIPAC event drew nearly 20,000 people to Washington, D.C., and this year's speakers are making big headlines. CBN's David Brody reports from the nation's capital.
The big pro-Israel conference always attracts a bipartisan Tier A list of political bigwigs looking to show their solidarity with Israel. Presidential candidate Hillary Clinton is one of them.
And Palestinian leaders need to stop inciting violence, stop celebrating terrorists as martyrs, and stop paying rewards to their families.
While Hillary Clinton showed up at AIPAC here in Washington, Bernie Sanders did not. But the real big event was those 3 Republican candidates on stage, specifically Donald Trump, who had some work to do in front of a pro-Israeli audience. Trump has been under criticism for saying that as president, he wants to be seen as neutral when trying to negotiate a potential peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians. His main challenger, Ted Cruz, tried to hit him on that.
Let me be very, very clear. As president, I will not be neutral. America will stand unapologetically with the nation of Israel.
But Trump's remarks were anything but neutral. In a crucial speech where he read off a teleprompter for the first time, Trump delivered an over-the-top pro-Israel address.
I speak to you today as a lifelong supporter and true friend of Israel. The Palestinians must come to the table knowing that the bond between the United States and Israel is absolutely, totally unbreakable. And they must come to the table willing to accept that Israel is a Jewish state and it will forever exist as a Jewish state.
John Kasich, who's a distant third in this presidential race, didn't go after Trump. Instead, he played the leadership card.
As the candidate in this race with the deepest and most far-reaching foreign policy and national security experience, ladies and gentlemen, I don't need on-the-job training.
Beyond presidential politics, the conference's main goal is to get participants active on issues that matter to Israel. Among the key concerns is the growing anti-Israel BDS movement. It stands for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. The movement is trying to economically isolate Israel from other countries in various ways because of their so-called occupation of Palestinian land. CBN was on hand at the conference trying to do their part to help. CEO Gordon Robertson presented CBN's new documentary. It's called The Hope, The Rebirth of Israel. It explains what happened in the 50 years leading up to the founding of the modern state of Israel. And the purpose of the documentary is significant.
The more I got into it, the more I decided that the world needed to see this and needed to be educated, particularly in light of what is currently going on with the BDS movement to try to boycott Israel. The more people are educated on how Israel actually came to be, what are the historical facts, the better able they are to argue against BDS.
There's no doubt Israel needs America's support, especially after a tense relationship with the Obama administration. So now these tens of thousands pro-Israel supporters here in Washington are looking for a new president who will stand stronger with Israel than ever before. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
The FBI says it may be able to bypass Apple to unlock the encrypted iPhone of one of the San Bernardino terrorists. So federal prosecutors have now asked to postpone today's hearing where they were planning to request Apple be forced to unlock the phone. Instead, authorities say they may be able to hack into the phone from a, quote, outside party. Militants murdered 4 Wycliffe associate workers in the Middle East. The ministry says terrorists raided their offices, killed the translators, and destroyed materials. 1 translator survived. The ministry is praising God. Work on 8 language projects was not destroyed. They're doubling efforts to finish those projects. A coordinator is asking for prayer as the ministry heals. She says, pray with me for the killers too. Pray for those whose hearts are so hard. Pray the Lord will open their eyes to what they have done. Today, President Obama is meeting with Cuban dissidents who've been critical of the Cuban government, and he's speaking out for human rights, including freedom of speech and freedom of religion. The visit comes at a time of renewed optimism in the Cuban church. It's been enjoying some relaxed restrictions and hoping for fruitful partnerships with American churches. Heather Sells brings us the story.
Thousands of Cubans worshiped recently in a 2-night open-air rally in Santiago, Cuba's second largest city. Total attendance for this location and another in Havana, 25,000. Even more remarkable, the Cuban government allowed it. In recent months, the government has increased its arrests of political dissidents, so organizer Steve Cordone considers these events a miracle.
You have to do everything literally by faith, because you are not sure if they are going to approve or not the visas, the permissions for the places, and anything can happen.
What did happen, an outpouring of the Spirit as people worshiped, listened to the teaching, and came to faith in Christ. More than 1,400 came forward.
When we see so many people giving their lives to Jesus, that's the first and main fruit.
Worship 24/7, which sponsored the event, also distributed 30,000 Bibles, so important in a country where they are not easily found. Cordone says believers are planning to launch a small Christian magazine and Christian music festival. He's encouraged to see a younger generation with new ideas for what can be done in a country where the church has suffered so much for decades.
Because I see that they are starting dreaming, that there's new hope, that they are getting tools, they are being empowered.
Veteran missionaries say Cuban believers are also cautiously optimistic about working with American churches thanks to the easing of U.S. travel restrictions.
They would really love to have church-to-church partnerships where people could come down and help them start agricultural projects and other micro businesses that would allow them not only to meet their own expenses, but also to do the community outreach that they're dreaming of doing.
Stewart and other missionaries caution that Americans should approach Cuban churches with great respect. In many ways, it's the Cuban church that could teach the American church. As a global expert on church planting and evangelism in the midst of extreme hardship. Heather Sells, CBN News.
The NFL has come out in opposition of a religious freedom bill passed by the Georgia legislature. The league is warning the measure could hurt Georgia's chances to host an upcoming Super Bowl. The law is designed to protect the rights of people who have religious objections to being involved in same-sex marriages. Governor Nathan Deal has received a lot of pressure to veto the bill, not only from the NFL, but also from a group that includes hundreds of major companies. The Georgia Baptist Mission Board is defending religious citizens protected by the bill, saying it is wrong to accuse persons of discrimination who live and conduct their businesses according to their deeply held religious beliefs. Coming up, modern-day pilgrims talk about their first trip to Israel. See how their tour of the Holy Land made the Bible come to life after this. The Jordanian government will install surveillance cameras on the Temple Mount within days. The measure is a response to ongoing Israeli-Palestinian violence at the holy site. But there's been controversy over the cameras. Israel wants cameras everywhere on the Temple Mount to catch Palestinians hiding weapons for attacks against Jews. But the country of Jordan is the custodian of the holy site, and its leaders say they will only allow the cameras to be placed in open areas. When many people consider a trip to Israel, they wonder, is it safe? As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, most tourists to the Holy Land not only feel completely secure, they discover a destination beyond all their expectations.
Much of the world only knows Israel from what it sees on television news or reads on the web. That typically includes images of violence and words like oppressed. But what's it really like in Israel?
Based on what the news media shows, many wouldn't expect to see shopping, restaurants, and people going about their daily lives. For example, this is the Mamilla Mall, just outside the walls of the old city. It's a combination of restaurants, shops, and cafes.
We talk with first-time tourists about their perception before leaving and the reality they experienced after their arrival.
What did people say to you when you told them you're going to come to Israel?
They questioned it. They said, do you really want to do that? Is it safe?
Did they say you were crazy?
That was a very common comment. Are you crazy? And I said, no. You know, nothing was going to stop me. You know, people couldn't talk me out of it. So.
And how did you feel before you came? What was it like?
Probably a little apprehensive, but excited. You know, we just couldn't wait to see where Christ has walked, and it was more than I expected. It was amazing.
Some felt coming to Israel might send a message in fighting back against the growth of terrorism.
I had some friends who said, why don't you come along? And I thought, oh, I'm not sure I should. It might be a little dangerous. And then I thought, goodness, life is dangerous. Really, I came from the Boston Marathon. I mean, there's so much going on that I'm not going to worry about it.
If you stop moving, the bad guys win. It's ridiculous.
Tuvia Zaretsky arranged their tour with an eye on ancient history and current events.
I told them I wanted to come over here and look at the world that's here and the people that are here and the places where the Bible events took place. And for them, it has been an eye-opening experience. And it's in the context of Israel today.
Samuel Smaja has led tours here for more than 20 years.
Israel doesn't come in the category of tourist destination. Israel is not the Bahamas. Israel is not even Paris. Israel is not even Rome. I believe Israel is the stage of your faith. And I believe coming to Israel will encourage you in your walking with the Lord.
And what was it like after these tourists made their leap of faith to come to Israel?
The Israelis really have their act together.
They really
Felt
do.
very comfortable. The people are wonderful, they're very professional, they're very caring, and they really want to make us feel welcome. It's a very sophisticated, cosmopolitan city.
So when we got here, there was such a peace. The whole time we've been here, I have never felt not safe.
And they did know Israel has been experiencing its own wave of terror.
They told us there are places you definitely don't want to go, but there are places in any city in the United States you don't want to go to.
Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat told CBN News, despite the current violence, Jerusalem is a safer city than most.
We have the best police in the world. We have the best security forces. Per capita, we're safe as London when you really check the numbers. So actually, when I fly to America, I pray to come back home safely to Jerusalem, because the crime rates in America are 6 times more per capita than in Jerusalem.
And how did these Christian pilgrims feel after walking in the footsteps of Jesus?
Oh, it was quite moving. Yeah, it brought me to tears a few times. There's not another feeling like walking where Christ has walked.
I don't think I'll ever read the Bible the same way anymore.
Yes.
I've been so moved by being here. I would not trade it for anything.
And I felt the Lord with me through this trip, and He's been speaking to my heart and doing good work in there. And I wouldn't trade it for anything either. I'm so glad I came.
It also brought the Bible to life.
For me, it really tied the Old Testament and the New Testament together in ways that I could not have done had I not come here and seen the geography and appreciated the history.
I really believe that after you come to Israel, you'll never be the same. For several reasons. First of all, you'll read the Bible in a different understanding. You'll be able to visual whatever you read, and you'll be able to understand the Jewish Christian background of the Word of God, and you'll see how deep your faith is. And my prayer is that when you come to Israel, you will leave here praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Up next, a mother's heartbreak, how this mom handled the shock of hearing her son announce he's gay, even though he was raised in a Christian home. Each day, we're rolling out a new segment from a special report called Homosexuality, A Christian View. Today, we look at the complicated relationship between parents and children. According to one study, 40% of homeless teenagers are gay, many of them living on the streets because they've been rejected by their families. Christian parents of gay children are in a tough spot. How do they hold on to the biblical view on homosexuality and at the same time love their children unconditionally? For one mother, it all began with a letter.
I received a letter from him explaining to me that it was something he couldn't keep any longer and that he believed him to be gay. He said that he was prepared to lose his family over it. I just remember, of course, a sinking heart, but that I didn't want to do anything wrong.
When my mom got the letter, she emailed me. And she told me she loved me and that she needed to process it. I was conscious of the fact that, it had taken me 10 plus, about 8 to 10 years to feel comfortable saying it to her, and that I needed to allow her the time to process it fully.
I knew what the scripture said, and I knew how God feels about it. And I didn't know how to transcend the love of my child into immediately going into, you've been raised in the church, this is not God's best for you. I wasn't thinking that was what I needed to be saying. I just began to seek as much information as I could. I contacted different organizations and just began to investigate what I could do.
Once we did start speaking again, we really had to, she was learning something new about me, and I had to learn what limits I had in really talking to her about my life. It was an awkward few years of dancing around something that was, the elephant in the room.
When I began to talk with close friends and You know, they're like, oh, this is awful. You don't let him in the house, do you? There's not that acceptance of the personhood of the child, which I think a parent just wants that. I'm not ashamed of my child. I'm not ashamed of the person he is. He's an incredible person.
You're still dealing with the typical parent-child stuff, and then you just have this extra layer on top of it. But I do think that the frankness that now exists in my relationship with my mom, because of the way in which I came out to her and has made that better. I no longer feel like the black sheep because I'm the gay son. And I do think that my relationship with my mom is a big part of that.
I just feel in my heart when I began my quest is I'm a mom, you know, and I love my child. So I was going to keep loving him through this, and you know, it's not anything that will ever be easy for me, but I've not rejected my child.
And to watch the entire special, as well as full interviews and other resources, please visit our website. That is cbnnews.com/Christian View. Stay with us. We're coming right back. It is time now for your Tuesday Tweetable, and here's a thought to consider as we continue to celebrate this Easter season. Christ did not die to give us religion. He died to restore us to a relationship with Him. And that relationship is bigger than any religion. It is an open invitation to speak and be with Him every second of every day. Consider that and make this Tuesday a terrific one. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And take the time to tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that at Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Once again, it's Tuesday. Make it a terrific one. We'll see you tomorrow.